Hi, I'm Otto Penzler. I'm in the Mysterious Bookshop in New York City. This is my office. And today we're going to talk a little bit about collecting one of the great writers alive today, James Lee Burke. Jim has been writing since, being published since 1970. His early books were not mysteries. He is now very famous for the Dave Robichaux series. Several films have been made from his work, but he started out as a literary writer who was being compared to Jean-Paul Sartre, Ernest Hemingway, and Thomas Hardy, which is kind of an unlikely grouping if I've ever heard one. Uh, but those books are very collected these days. I don't have a copy of the first book, but this is the second book. To the Bright and Shining Sun. Very nice. Very uncommon book. It's published by Scribner. And for those of you who watch this thing on a regular basis, you know that Scribner shows their first edition by having an A on the copyright page. And that started in 1930, but it continued until fairly recently. I don't think they do it anymore. But that's, if you're collecting Burke and you want the non-mysteries, they're pretty expensive. Just to warn you, this one is $1,300. His third book, Lay Down My Sword and Shield, 2 copies. This one's signed, and it's $750. Also this is published by Thomas Kroll, and they use a different system starting with the number 1 on the copyright page. If that 1 is not there, it's a second printing. Although I don't think there was a second printing of this book. I've never seen a second printing. I've only seen the first. And it wasn't a very large print run because he wasn't very successful yet. Even a signed copy, it's less expensive than the second book or the first book at $750, because there were a few more copies than there were on the even earlier books. However, if you want to get to a really rare book, the hardcover first edition of The Convict. This is $1,500. There were only 500 copies printed. Louisiana State University Press did it. Now this book, 1985, just to give you an idea, Lay Down My Sword and Shield was 1972, 71, okay? Next book, 1985. There was a paperback original in there called Two for Texas, but he didn't get published. Unfortunately, he had to work a variety of other jobs because he was writing, but he wasn't getting published. His agent submitted The Convict and The Lost Get Back Boogie, which came out in '86, 1 year after The Convict. He tried for 14 years to make a sale for his client, had more than 100 submissions, and just stayed with it because he believed in his author so much, and rightly so. Then, well, let me show you these books first. So here's The Convict, one of 500 copies, Louisiana State University Press, 1985. And I don't think there's a limitation in the book. Frequently, if a book is limited to only 500 copies, there would be a limitation page that says this is one of 500 copies. But this was just a book that LSU Press published, but they only did a 500 copy print run. The Lost Get Back Boogie It's a little more common. This is a signed copy for $500, and the reported print run on this was 2,000. The Convict, there is a British hardcover of The Convict, which came out after the first edition, and for people who want a hardcover, and which they should have, Convict and Other Stories, this was published in the UK in 1995, and it's $100 because it's still fairly uncommon, but not as rare as the LSU press edition. Then he created Dave Robichaux with the Neon Rain. Unfortunately, every time I have it, it sells very quickly, so I don't have one to show you. But the second book, with a very similar cover, was published by Henry Holt. And we do have a signed copy of this. There's the signature. And Holt has the most common method in modern times, of showing their first edition. Again, it has the number, a run of numbers, a line of numbers beginning with the number 1. No number 1, no first edition. This is $275. The third book in the Robichaux series was Black Cherry Blues, which won the Edgar. I had tried to buy James Lee Burke to publish at the Mysterious Press. I got the manuscript the day before I was leaving for the London Book Fair, and I carried it with me because I knew the agent a little bit, and he said, "I think you're going to like this." And so I printed out the manuscript, or I got it as a printed copy, I suppose, and took it with me to the London Book Fair and read it on the flight, and absolutely loved it. This is the Neon Rain. This is the first Dave Robichaux book. And when I got there, the Mysterious Press at that time was an imprint at Warner Books. And the man running Warner Books was Larry Kirschbaum. And I said, "This is a fantastic book. I know that's the London Book Fair. I know you have appointments and dinners and meetings and drink dates and all of that. But is there some way you can read this book?" And he did. He read it overnight. And he said, "This is fantastic. We should try to sign this guy up." Now, remember, his previous book, he sold 2,000 copies. Or there were 2,000 printed. We don't even know if they sold 2,000. So I got into a bidding war when I came back. For a 2-book contract, I offered $125,000, which was so much money for Mysterious Press. But I just really, I had so much confidence and belief in the author that I was willing to do that. I lost the bidding, and they won. So, sad story. He's been published ever since by big publishing companies, not by the Mysterious Press, which is where he belonged. He also won an Edgar, by the way, for Cinnamon Rose. There's the American edition, but there's the British edition, which came out first. So the British edition is the true first. By this time, he was pretty popular. There were pretty big print runs, and first editions of the later books are fairly common. So they're basically at cover price. The British first edition, the true first, is $25. So it's possible to collect him at a very reasonable rate for most of his later books. However, one thing that is unusual for Burke, in an era where modern authors are in fact collected, very few people were and are as avidly collected as Burke. And if the one evidence of that, look at this. This isn't every limited edition that he's ever done, but it's a pretty good sampling. You don't publish limited editions of an author unless he's seriously collected. He was named a Grandmaster by the Mystery Writers of America, and obviously is a worthy subject for putting together a nice collection. He wrote quite a few books. It's more than 30 books now. But also, by the way, in addition to creating all of these great books, he also created Alifair Burke, his daughter, who is now also a best-selling mystery writer. James Lee Burke.